We'll stand and we'll pray to begin here. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. O heavenly King, the Comforter of the Spirit of truth, who art everywhere present and fillest all things, treasure of blessings and giver of life, come and abide in us and let us live in purity and save our souls, O good one. God bless and keep us all. And I want to thank Lydia Melinda Johnson for being here to offer what she has prepared for us tonight is some hopefully wonderful bits of information and wisdom to help us know how best to minister to the, well, I'll have to fix that in a second. We'll start and then I'll get that started fixed there. But the next generation of the Gen Zers and even beyond, ministering to them and how they're also participating at Ancient Faith. So it is a real joy. Of course, she's the CEO of Ancient Faith Publications. It's good to have you all here this evening. I'll let Melinda take over here. God bless and keep you.
Thank you very much, Father.
Thank you.
And the pepperoni pizza is now here. Melinda, I'll save you. The important things. But it's right here and it's hot.
So before I get started, I would just like a show of hands. How many of you have heard of Ancient Faith Ministries? Yes. The last time I asked that in a room, there was 10 people in the back, and everybody else was staring at me. And I thought, well, they're starting at the very, very beginning. As we were talking, John, there we go, and I were talking about what I would talk about, and I started thinking about what am I qualified to talk about. I'm a corgi owner, I could talk about, but that's not an Orthodox topic. So, my whole life, my whole working life, my curiosity and my search for meaning and everything at this point are all just completely wrapped up in my work at Ancient Faith, and that is whatever expertise I have now is really centered on running an Orthodox nonprofit. So I was thinking about that and thinking about, I've been the CEO for a year and a month. And in that year, my tenure began right as we just hit this huge growth ramp and sort of a generational turnover with our staff and with some of our listeners and our readers. So there are all kinds of these big questions, sometimes funny questions, scary questions going on in Ancient Faith. And I wanted to sort of put what we've learned so far, and I do want to keep that so far, what we've learned so far, put that all together, because I think a lot of what's happening at Ancient Faith is also happening in the church. We're very strong believers that the parish is the heart of a church. We see ourselves very much as a ministry in support of what actually happens in the real world, in the parish. Father's right about the internet. It's a scary, strange, really strange place. We spend a lot of time on it, for better and for worse. So our goal obviously is to provide resources for people who are Orthodox, who might someday be, who might never be. We're out there looking for something human, something full of light, trying to find God on the internet. So this presentation is going to be sort of a distillation of some of the things that I feel that we've learned in this last year. Just to give you a little bit of context, a little bit of background, Ancient Faith Ministries has actually been around for a long time, but it was originally two organizations. There was a publishing house out in California called Conciliar Press, and it's been around for a long time. Since the Evangelical Orthodox actually came in the 80s. They came into the Orthodox Church, there was nothing in English. Metropolitan Philip said, you're gonna have to do something about that. They started a publishing house. And then in 2004, on Thanksgiving weekend, my former boss, John Maddox, began Ancient Faith Radio completely separately in Chicago. He had actually been in radio for many years before then. He converted to Orthodoxy. He'd been working in Christian radio, so now he was the wrong kind of Christian, so he wasn't welcome anymore. So the Orthodox said, well, why don't we do the same thing for us? And that was the beginning of Ancient Faith Radio. And then in the early 2000s, like 2008, 6 or 8, something like that, the two merged. So Conciliar Press and Ancient Faith Radio came together. For a brief time, they were called Conciliar Media Ministries, and then they decided that was too hard. So then they became Ancient Faith Ministries, and at that point, it moved out of California to Chicago and then northern Indiana. So our headquarters is in northern Indiana, in Chesterton. It's about an hour south of Chicago. We actually do have a physical location. We used to live in the Maddox house. We were in their guest bedroom for a while, then we were in the basement. Actually, I think we started on the back porch, then the guest bedroom, I don't remember, but We're now in an actual space. We got our first out of the Maddox House space in 2018, and then this year we actually moved to a much bigger space, such that we have, for example, 2 areas, soundproof areas. Actually, one is soundproof, the other we still need to soundproof. So you can have 2 audio events happening in the same space at the same time. In our previous one, there was no door. So if somebody was doing something on the radio, everybody else was quiet, and there was only one thing you could do. So we're growing, expanding into this bigger space, but that gives you sort of the picture. So this is the most frightening people in the world, right here. It's good to remember that, some of you actually are probably still a member of this generation or only recently out of it. All of us were this, we were all this once. All of us at some point are the scary younger generation, the ones who are different than the parents, different than the people who have all the jobs, who are paying all the bills, who are moving ahead with technology, with cultural changes, who are combative, they don't listen, they live in this other world, we love them a lot, and we're terrified of losing them, and of not being able to talk to them in ways that what we care about actually can be communicated. So, this is where we're starting, with the scary, scary people. We're facing that same question. So when you think about, how do I talk to the next generation? How do I talk to people who aren't like me, maybe in my own generation, people who aren't Orthodox or came from a completely different background? How do I talk to them? The frame, in your case, might be, your family or your neighborhood, or in this case, the parish. For us, this frame is Ancient Faith Ministries. So I want to just give you a quick run through of what we do, and then we're going to come back to these questions. So cover that. It was 2 different organizations. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit Orthodox Christian media ministry, incorporated originally in California, but now in Indiana. We have a pan-Orthodox board. So we operate with the blessing of the Antiochian Archdiocese, but we're financially independent. So we do have Antiochians on our board, but we also have other jurisdictions represented as well. And we have 4 divisions. We have Ancient Faith Radio, Ancient Faith Publishing, Ancient Faith Store, and Ancient Faith Kids, which just had its first birthday. So Ancient Faith Radio, we have 3 streaming stations. So I heard you say, we used to be, no, we're an internet radio station. We've only ever actually been an internet radio station. It's the wave of the future, it's still the wave of the future. It's the wave of a number of futures at this point. So anywhere in the world that somebody has an internet connection, they can listen to Ancient Faith Radios, which is happening. We're being heard in over 120 countries at this point. So you have those streaming stations, which are playing constantly. There's an English language music station, just global Orthodox music station, and then a talk station that just runs all different podcasts. And then there's also podcasts, which are, on demand. I want to listen to, you go click it and listen to it. This at the bottom, 350,000 downloads a month. Download is the word that the counter, the analytics counter uses for somebody saying, I'm gonna listen to this podcast, click, and it counts that as a download. So 350,000 times per month, somebody comes to an Ancient Faith, either on the app or on the website, and listens to a podcast, or starts to listen to a podcast. So that's a lot of people all over the world. We don't know who they all are. We don't know what all of their life circumstances are. It's a huge net. Next. We have Ancient Faith Publishing. Here's some of our more recent books. I think I saw some of these back there on the table. We also do, over on the, what is that? That's your left. Booklets and brochures that answer all kinds of questions. So these are much smaller publications that take on just one specific topic. A lot of parishes have that. It comes in this little, you can get the rack and then put all the little brochures in the little slots. Very satisfying. We do an icon calendar every year. We do an old calendar one and a new calendar one for those who want the others. And we also do all different greeting cards. This is some that just came out. Those are little clips of stained glass windows in one of the big Greek Orthodox churches in Birmingham, Alabama, actually. So we have Christmas cards, Pascha cards, and they are for sale in the Ancient Faith Store. This is a screen grab of, I went to the Ancient Faith Store. This is the front page of it. So we sell, obviously, all of our own publications, greeting cards, icon calendars, but we also sell books from all kinds of other publishers, Orthodox publishers. We sell, worship supplies, like things for your icon corner, incense, charcoal, little censers, icons, baptismal crosses, children's games, all kinds of things, all kinds of Orthodox things in the Ancient Faith Store. And yeah, I have to have a moment here. This is, registration is closed, but this is the banner advertising the Ancient Faith Singles Retreat, which is a pet project of mine. It's been an adventure from the moment it existed. And it's happening in 10 days, not even 10 days, at Antioquia Village. I have 160 Orthodox singles coming. What was my number? 84 women and 72 men. No, that doesn't add up, is it? Something like that. It's 86 and 74, pretty good ratio. The first week it opened, it had 27 women and 3 men, so. Very, very thankful to the Lord. That it kept rolling. So yeah, we do also do events, most of which are at Antioquia Village, which is 90 minutes from here. So that's our tour.
Wait, you gotta go back.
Huh?
Tell them who Father Martin Johnson is.
My husband. Father Martin Johnson. He would be with us tonight, except that in addition to being a priest, he's also, he's a retired Navy chaplain, and he's a hospital chaplain in Allegheny General. If you ever end up at Allegheny General, we want an Orthodox chaplain. He's your man. He's a tall tale character. He's like 6 feet tall, 4 feet wide. He has this huge, booming Navy deck plate voice, and he's been everywhere in the world. He's a Marine Corps combat veteran. He's a tall tale character. He seriously is. There's only one, and I got him. Ancient Faith Kids. So we've been publishing children's books since we existed. I mean, for a long, long time. But this part of our ministry sort of got bigger, and we wanted to branch out and add video as well as books. So we created a little division. It's run by Jane Meyer, who, if you know anything about Orthodox children's books, she's written a bunch of them. She's been part of that world almost since it was a world. And she's taken this over and done a beautiful job with it. So there is an Ancient Faith Kids YouTube channel. They release a new video every Thursday. This is as close as you're ever going to get to Orthodox Sesame Street. This is Rocco's Music Factory. They take on all different topics. You should see it. Okay, we have board members, board of directors members who are definitely grown-ups who are fans of Rocco's Music Factory. This other one over here, Drawing Furry Friends and the Saints. This is an artist who's actually illustrated some books for us, who teaches. She'll do a little story about the saint and his friend. Can anybody tell me what saint this is?
Yes.
Please tell me this is an OCA church, somebody who knows what saint that is.
Saint Seraphim of Savannah.
Yes, right, with his bear. So she tells a little story about the saint and their animal, and then shows you very simply how to draw a bear, right? So there are all kinds of, we're gonna have a chanting one. There's an iconography one that's starting soon. There's one that does more sort of for homeschoolers, takes a look at science, sort of from the perspective of, very simple scientific concepts, and looking at them with God, sort of a God's eye view. So this is one of the best-selling children's books in the Orthodox world. It was an absolute barn burner. It actually sold out not long after it came out, and it was mad scramble to get more of them. It's a beautiful, hardback, full color, 101 Orthodox saints. It's kind of like a Lego book. Like there's the saint, it has a little map where you come from, a little story and fun facts and all that kind of stuff.
About 50 have been sold here.
Yeah, it's one of our best sellers too.
It's crazy. And grown-ups buy it. No. Yeah. So there's actually 102 Orthodox saints coming out. I don't know if that's a secret. It's not a secret anymore. There's gonna be another one. It's coming out. It's in production now. So this is something that's very close to our hearts. Quick sidebar. We have had so many conversations about making a YouTube channel for kids, because there are many parents and people who aren't even parents have very mixed feelings about the idea of children on the internet, children on YouTube, children in screen time. Our usual sort of centering point is children are on the internet, whether you want them to be there or not. Many of the children on the internet don't have a family that cares about that for them, or is protecting them in that way. So this is our way of using the tool in a way that we can, that's for good, and also hopefully putting something out there that will be available to a child who might not have gotten it any other way. So we see this as an act of mercy and hopefully an act of love and faithfulness. Next. Okay, we're back to this. So life has taught me that most of us are not really an expert on anything. We get the best we can out of our experience. So rather than posit this as, I'm going to teach all of you all the great things that we've learned, I want to look at this as us asking questions together. Asking questions about what do we need to know, or what do we need to take into consideration when we think about talking to people who are not a member of our generation, or maybe not people who have shared our experience. and hopefully we'll learn something together. So, the first question is, why is this so hard? Why is it so hard? People ask Ancient Faith a lot. You know, please provide a resource to help me talk to my kid about X. Or, my kid doesn't want anything to do with church anymore because of this. Can you do a podcast on this? Can you write a book about this? Or, on the flip side, we also have people coming to us saying, I want to make XYZ for kids or for teens or for young adults. I'm going to create this for them. Some of these ideas are great, and some of them really don't work at all. We have, what should we call it? Research. We have research data, small research data to prove that. So I thought it would be helpful to sort of describe the situation if I put some real life examples. I have 4 real life examples that are sort of generalized out of situations that have actually come up in Ancient Faith. And on this side are the things that, the sort of surprise angles that changed how we looked at them as we were dealing with them. So my first one is, you know, I want to write books for teens, or I want to write books for young adults. You can put in, I want to create podcasts, I want to, you know, make whatever it is, but I'm starting with books. So the first question you have to ask, usually there's sort of a flurry of conversation about how would you make the book presentable, what would it look like, maybe if the cover was, and then there's a pause, and you have to ask the bigger question, which is a lesson that we've learned. You always have to stop and ask the bigger question is, do teens even read books? Exactly. They don't. They don't. I actually went and looked up some numbers on this to just completely depress myself because I really like books a lot. I like paper. Much better than screens. So, here's my data for you. Less than 20% of teens report reading a book or a magazine or a newspaper. It doesn't even have to just be a book on a daily basis. Less than 20%. By contrast, 95% of teens between the ages of 13 and 17 have at least once tried YouTube. And 77% are regular users. So less than 20% are touching a book for any reason outside of school. And on the flip side, 77% are YouTube users. It gets worse. So they also they did this whole survey. This is the American Psychological Association with a whole bunch of kids. 20% of them are on YouTube almost constantly. So the phone is with them all day long and it's on YouTube all day long. And they're not like, it's an intermittent, you know, I'm paying attention in class and I probably have it under the desk, or I'm on it again in the hall, or as soon as I stop talking to you, I'm back on it. It's this constant re-engagement. And 40% said that they're on it multiple times a day. So maybe they're not that bad, but it's multiple times a day. So then you have to go back and look at, I want to write books for teens. Usually the impetus behind wanting to write those books is that you're trying to reach somebody, right? You have something important to communicate and you're trying to figure out how to package it so that it'll get through. Is the book going to get through? Interestingly, 23% of American adults have not read a book. 23% have not read a book. So about 77% are reading books, so it's almost exactly the opposite. So people who are presenting, you know, wanting to offer this ministry are a member of a group that statistically is very likely to read a book. So this makes sense for us, right? Of course, you know, if I want to communicate something, I'm going to write a book. The people we're trying to reach have the opposite statistic. So the tool we would choose first is the last thing that would get through. And now I can go home because that's pretty much the whole paradigm right there. There have been so many moments like that where we had to just stop cold. As our staff is actually getting younger, you know, I took a job from somebody who would have retired. We have other people retiring, so we actually have people on staff now who are in their 20s and 30s, all the way up to a few other people who are, you know, about to retire. So we have this whole generational range, and it's phenomenal. It is an incredible resource to have all those different voices in-house putting their little polite hand up and saying, actually, that's not what we're called, here's why. Or if you're trying to reach somebody like me, you just failed. And it's always courteous and respectful and full of faith, and it's brutally real, and we need that, so it's really important. Here's another one. So I have this 5-minute video on faith, or sometimes it's worse, I have a 30-minute video on faith, you know, from the generation that watched, you know, like, I don't know, what's the Good Morning America or whatever, like, we still have that TV show mentality, right? It was half an hour. TV shows are all half an hour. Nobody watches TV like that anymore. Most videos consumed where? It's on YouTube, right? It's on social media. So you have 8 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you're done, that's all you get. You have 8 seconds to engage someone's attention, or they're gonna thumb scroll past. If you haven't caught them in the first 8 seconds, the rest of your 5-minute video, they're not ever gonna see it. Or your 30-minute video, or your hour-long documentary, or all the other things that us old phones love, right? Also, the sound is probably going to be turned off. A lot of the time, people are scrolling and maybe they're in class. Or they're, on the bus, or, in some crowded place, or they're just tired, and it's a way of reducing the sort of sensory impact of what they're looking at, so they just turn the sound off. So now, your video has to catch people's attention in 8 seconds with no sound. It's not impossible, people do it all the time. It just changes how you look at what you're doing, and how you realize that you need to do it. So this is another one, this is a little more subtle. I was trying to figure out how to say this in a short sentence, like, this is life-changing, you need it, or this is really important, or buy now. Are you selling something?
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk about this again later, but it's important to remember that Gen Z and Gen Alpha, the ones who are younger than Gen Z are called Gen Alpha. So like pretty much, high school on down, maybe college on down. These kids have been marketed to since they were born. Like just sit with that for a minute. Since they were born, like from that age. Somebody's been selling to them. It's all around them. It's on every show that they watch has advertising. It's, they hear it, they see it. It's just this constant, it's in the air and in the water. Being skeptical is a life skill, right? They actually teach it in school. My daughter is a senior in high school. A couple years ago, they had a class, I can't remember, it was in English maybe, where the teacher had a whole unit on how to discover or sort of things that might tip you off that somebody's lying to you on the internet. And it was a unit. She had examples, they had a quiz. It was a whole taught thing because lots and lots of people are lying to you on the internet, and they're usually doing it to get something from you. So this is a life skill, right? So if you're talking to somebody who at 10 years old already knows that people are selling, already knows that people lie in order to sell, if you start sounding like traditional advertising or traditional marketing speak, the conversation is already over. You're now a suspect, and they just turned it off. So all that enthusiasm, how do you communicate that meaning and that importance and that enthusiasm without sounding like a used car salesman? It's a hard thing. And this is also really hard. Well, that's just not orthodox, or that's just wrong, or we can't have anything to do with that because it's orthodox. We're orthodox, and we don't do that. There are times when that's the right thing, where drawing a line in the sand and putting your toes next to it is the right thing. There are also times where what is heard from that, again, if you're operating in this internet world like they are, where everything is permissible, everything is discussable, everything is photographable, from people's food to, when you think about it, even when you get engaged now, it's this huge choreographed thing, and the whole, like, you have people hiding, like, you have to bring somebody to video your proposal, like, everything is visible, right? Everything can be talked about. So if you're not willing to talk about it, you must be scared. So now you're scared. You're look at you. You're reading books, you take more than 8 seconds on your video, you're selling stuff, and you're scared. Why am I going to listen to you? All of these are things that we learned by smacking our faces into them, and they were all things that sort of the natural first response is, well, that's not what I meant. I didn't mean to do something that wouldn't reach people. I didn't mean to be boring or to take too long. I didn't mean to sound like I was selling something. I didn't mean to sound like I'm scared and I won't talk to you about real things. But when you haven't figured out how you're coming across to the other person and how the life that they're having, the world that they grew up in, is so different than it was a generation ago, then sometimes those unintended messages put up barriers. I would love to hear, if any of you are brave enough to spout off here, these are some things, if I'm looking at sort of like big picture, why does this happen? When time passes, technology changes, culture changes. Do we not have enough information about each other? Do we have, are we making assumptions about each other? Do we all just have an attitude problem? Kids from the 80s. Our experiences are different. What do you think? What do you think is in play here? You have an opinion. I can see that you have an opinion. I want to hear it.
No, just all 4 of your bullet points, I'm like, I have been not engaged by things because of those reasons. I'm not in your, I'm not in that Gen Z quite, but just like
You're closer than anybody else here, I would
the,
imagine.
well,
Are you?
I'm right on the border.
You're right on the border.
Yeah, one leg in each.
So you two are gonna keep me honest. If I see you shaking your heads and be like, oh no, I got it wrong.
Aren't you
the
both
marketing
Catholic,
thing
Nancy?
was just like, oh my gosh, that is so true. Just
Oh,
like,
being
just
told
like,
you all the
just
time.
like professional skepticism, like in your whole life, everything you look at, you're like, yeah, just, I don't know.
Well, you have to. It's a survival skill.
Yeah, otherwise you buy everything and send all your money to, you know, Timbuktu. Yeah.
Or you got, I mean, and some of it's selling and some of it's, you know, there are parts of the internet are dangerous, right? You wanna be really careful about what you get pulled into, so yeah, for sure. Anybody else? Alright. Where I see it, you asked me to come here and talk, you're like, no, we're not talking, you're about to do the talking, so I'll keep doing the talking. Next slide. So, now we get to the part where I'm going to share 5 sort of, I almost put lessons learned because my husband's a Navy veteran and that's what you do in the Navy. You have after action reports, right? And you go through lessons learned. See some nodding heads out there. But I didn't. I called them life lessons. And I want to be really clear about this. Ancient Faith Ministries, when I joined, let's see, I've been there since 2016. I think I was the 10th employee. Maybe I was number 11. And we now have 23. So for us, that's huge. Like we have twice as many people as we used to. But in the grand scheme of like, you know, Coca-Cola or I don't know, Volvo or a company like that, we're like we're so small. So small. So we have market research of a kind. Like we do a little Ancient Faith survey every year. We ask people questions. We have a social media platform, so people contact us there. People write us letters all the time, or emails, I guess. They're not letters. They write to us. Sometimes they call us. We've heard some amazing stories. So we have feedback from our customers, from our listeners, from people who are just driving by our social media. But we aren't able to use the kind of like big market research, where they poll thousands of people and they put you in focus groups and you try 2 different kinds of butter and decide this is the kind of, we don't have any of that. Like that is not a thing in the Orthodox world. So we're moving toward trying to make what you would call data-driven decisions. But our data is seriously limited. And also, we haven't, consulted the experts. Like, who are the experts, right? Who are the experts on this? Like, all of us are, and none of us are. We're trying to become expert at this, but we're learning as we go. Just as every other generation before us had to learn how to talk to the people older than them and the people younger than them. It's a human condition, right? It's something that we all have to do. So I want you to take these 5 points as things we learned the hard way, things that are based on experience and on some input from the people that we work with and for. But things that, maybe in your own setting, you would adapt them a little bit, or they would be a little bit different, or you might have a completely different experience. Number 1, be aware. This is so hard. So I am annoyingly famous at work, or maybe just annoying. I'm annoying at work. I'm going around saying, we are not our target audience. We are not. The people who are making this content, maybe it's the publishing committee, or maybe it's the Ancient Faith Radio people, or the people in the store who are deciding what kind of icons to stock. We are not our target audience. The people that we're trying to reach are our target audience. So when we're making something, we're not making it for ourselves. We're making it for other people. It is so hard to remember this because everybody at work is Orthodox, right? And all of the people that we're serving are Orthodox, or they're interested in Orthodoxy. Maybe they're a catechumen, or maybe they're just a person who's just curious. But that Orthodoxy is a thing we have in common. So it's really easy to think, well, I'm an Orthodox person, and I think that's great. So all Orthodox people are going to like it. No, they're not. No, they're not. Orthodoxy is not uniform. Even at the sort of big picture level, we have jurisdictions, right? You have Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, Serbian Orthodox. Yeah, but they're not all the same. All you have to do is go visit their parishes, right? And then within all those jurisdictions, you have the age range, right? You have multiple generations. You have people who are cradled, people who are, have been Orthodox for 15 minutes, and everything in between, and all their different life experiences. So it's really easy to fall into the trap of, well, I like it, so other people will. Well, maybe they will. But really, we only represent ourselves. One way to try, again, without being able to go out and purchase market research. One way is to sort of try to stand in the other person's shoes, and that takes a little bit of imagination, and you might be wrong. Like, you just have to embrace that. You might be wrong. Like, you can try to imagine, how would I feel if, or how would this sound to me if, or what would, if I were in this situation, what would I need? You know, what kind of podcast would I need? What kind of book would I need? What kind of event would I need? But just the fact of trying helps. Even if you haven't come, you know, you're never going to be able to imagine all of the different possible combinations of human experience that are going to interact with your work or your parish, you know, or the content that you'll never do that. None of us are God. Only God knows everybody's heart. But if you're at least trying to be aware that it's more than just me, more than just my experience, or the experiences that are just like mine, or the ones that are known to me, it's a helpful sort of opening of your mind. Last point on this, it's really important to have a spiritual father. We obviously have access to lots and lots of fathers. We have so many priests. We have a wonderful collection. Both we have a priest on staff, we have spiritual advisor, we have, I don't even know how many priest podcasters. We can always get a hold of a priest. And we also have people who are priests and theologians, people who are theologians but not priests, lots and lots of resources. It's important to hang on to those things so that when we have a moment of feeling like, you know, this is something we have to dig our heels in on, this is really important, maybe it is, or maybe it's actually a little T tradition. You know, maybe it's a big T tradition, maybe it's a little T tradition, maybe it's doctrine, or maybe it's somebody's opinion, or maybe it's just the way that we've always done it here. I remember right after I got married, maybe right after my husband was ordained, there's a huge time gap there, but one of these moments of like beginning this in my life, somebody told me, my best piece of advice to you, honey, is if you do anything in a church 3 times, it becomes holy and you have to do it forever and ever afterwards. Just whatever it is, she's like, the carpet, doesn't matter what kind of soup you have, you do it 3 times, it's just holy forever. I'm like, well, in a way that's right? We get attached to the way things usually are at church, and we have them associated with church in our minds, right? So it all sort of starts to have this glow around it. And then if somebody wants to do something different, we have this huge emotional, visceral reaction to it. Sometimes it's something that's important to defend, and sometimes it's something we have to be able to let go, because it's just our experience. It's certainly a good experience, but it's just one. And sometimes, no, actually that's a tenet, a pillar of orthodoxy. You can't change that. That's not negotiable. So it's important to know when something's negotiable, when it's not, and to know who you can ask if you're not sure. Be orthodox. Okay, you've all been warned. I'm about to get up on my soapbox. I'll try not to stay on it very high. I can't even tell you how many situations I've been in, whether it's somebody's book or somebody's idea for an event or a podcast or an episode of a podcast, or who do they want to have as a guest on their show, and there's this sort of, and actually it isn't even just the Orthodox. I've seen this, I'm a convert, I've seen this in other religious circumstances. There's this idea that if you just sort of water it down, it will make it more accessible to other people. So we're gonna do it, but just don't put any icons on it, all right? And don't use any of those words, right? Like the main part will be Orthodox, but like try to make it look a little more mainstream, and that will make it more accessible. No, it won't. It won't. It will not. You don't make orthodoxy accessible by making it look like something it's not. There are so many reasons why that doesn't work. One, it just doesn't work. I've seen people try it and it doesn't work. Nobody is coming to the Orthodox for a Protestant experience. They're not stupid. That's not why they're here. If you think about how much of our world now and our ways of encountering each other, you can think of them in terms of, and they're actually often driven by, a Google search, right? If somebody's actually even looking at all, it's because they're looking for what you are. They want to see what an Orthodox church is. They didn't come to see a Protestant church. If they wanted a Protestant church, they'd go to a Protestant church, or they'd watch a Protestant YouTuber, or listen to a Protestant podcast, or get a Protestant book. There is so much content in the world of every flavor. There is just, my favorite statistic is every 24 hours, all of humanity creates more content, right? More words, more pictures, more sounds than we are able to consume in 24 hours. Every single 24 hours. So they don't need that from us. Makes me laughing. You have a wonderfully expressive face. I'm really enjoying speaking and watching your expressive face. So it's not why they're here. So if they come to us looking for orthodoxy, maybe they don't like it. Maybe they will never be Orthodox. Maybe they don't agree with the first thing about Orthodox Christianity. But if they're engaging with us at all, if they're on the Age of Faith website, or they showed up in your parish, they want to see what you are. That's why they're here. So be what you are. We need to be Orthodox. With the icons, we need to stick the icons on it and use the words and the vestments and the topics that we talk about that nobody else in the world cares about. We need to do all of those things. One, because it's the right thing to do. It's the honest thing to do, right? But also because God is amazing, right? Usually the right thing to do ends up being a good idea also, right? It's also effective. So if you want to be accommodating or accessible to people who maybe have no experience with Christianity at all, which is actually a large group of people. People always, in the early days of ancient faith, because we had roots in the evangelical Orthodox movement, there was this sort of starting assumption that anybody interested in us who wasn't Orthodox yet was an evangelical, because there were so many evangelicals, converting in those days. But at this point, they could be anything. They could be pagan. They could be completely unchurched. They could be Catholic. They could be, we don't know. When they come, the way to be accessible is to be clear and to be kind. So if you're using a word or an image or a practice that you can see they have never seen before in their life, their hair is standing on end, their eyeballs are crossed, rather than remove it, explain it. So I just said iconostas, and I can see from your face you have no idea what I'm talking about. So do you see at the front of the church there's a big, like a wooden wall, right? And it's got pictures on it. The pictures are called icons, and the stasis part, that means it's standing up. So we have pictures on a thing that's standing up, that's what iconostas is. That's how you make it accessible. You don't take the iconostas away, you tell them what it is. And the other thing, the biggest thing, is to be kind. The thing that drives people away from Christianity is a lack of hospitality. It's not our teachings, many times it's not our teachings. It's not our funny pictures, it's not our miserable big vestments, our long services, our scary bishops, none of those things. It's if they came in contact with us, whether it was online or in person, were people nice to them? Did they have to sit all by themselves at coffee hour and nobody talked to them? Did somebody laugh at them when they said a word wrong? Did they try to offer what was going on in their life and get scorned or shamed? Those are the things that make any experience inaccessible. So if we're willing to be clear and willing to be kind, that's all we need to do. But we need to be Orthodox. This is the same thing coming at it from a different angle. Be authentic. So authenticity, quote unquote, this is the big thing. This is a priority value for Gen Z. Again, if you look back at that, what is that life experience of being marketed to and being surrounded by the internet and the imaginary all the time? So what is the most important thing? Is what's not imaginary. They want to know what's actually going on. Who are you actually, right? What are they saying? You do you, right? It's a way of affirming each other, but it's also a request. Like, don't pretend to be something else. Show me who you are, right? So it's that, to be aware, but to actually be Orthodox, to be straight up, be what you are, to be authentic, not to be trying to promote something. Maybe when you want to explain how important something is, rather than saying, this is really important and you should care about it, because you can say, this actually saved my life. I was having a really hard time at this point in my life, and I didn't know how to, cope with it in this way. Here's what helped me. Here's how this saved me, or here's why this really makes sense to me. Or what my favorite saint is? This is my favorite saint because here's the crazy thing that he did. Or have you seen the icon of Saint Marina where she's got the devil by his head, like she's holding him by his beard and she's conking him over the head with a hammer, right? That's real. That made me laugh the first time I saw it, but it's also a hugely powerful image. My father confessor has this amazing saying, I don't know if it's original to him, that he likes to say. He says, this is a soul talking to another soul. So you can get into that space where you're a soul talking to another soul. That's authenticity. The other part of this also is, I think when you're being authentic, there's the least likelihood that anybody's being manipulative, that anybody's trying to control how the other person thinks or how they feel. You're free. The other person is free and you're free. You're telling the truth, you're letting them tell the truth. And unless you have that freedom, you can never be authentic, right? If somebody is under somebody else's control, or if somebody's being pushed or pressured, they're not free. And whatever they're doing in those circumstances, as soon as the pressure is removed, they'll stop doing it. So unless you have that freedom and that authenticity, you're gonna be stuck. Be a good listener. You all are lovely good listeners. Thank you so much. If you think about all of us as part of the body of Christ, one way that somebody can experience the body of Christ is as that attentive ear, that person, listening heart, right? Where you're trying to hear what that person says without putting any of your own overlay, without, listening to their story just for a second so that you can tell your story, right? Or mentally thinking about how you're gonna top it, or how you're gonna respond to it, or how you're gonna rebut what they just said. Actually just sit there and hear what they're saying from them without any overlay from you. Trying to remember, and this is something I love to talk to you. What you hear is as important as what you say. Because, again, what is, God is love, right? The message of our whole faith points to Christ, and Christ is the source of all love. So if we can't offer somebody the courtesy and the respect and the quiet of actually listening to what they're saying, that's a barrier. It's not good for us, it's not good for them, it doesn't accomplish anything. So it's important to be a good listener. Also, you can't help somebody or truly minister to them if you don't know them. If you don't know what's going on with them, if you don't know what their life is like, if you don't know why they showed up in the first place, why are they here? What are they doing here? Do they have a question? Are they upset about something? Are they excited? Maybe they've already got it figured out. Maybe they're smarter than you are. Had that experience happen, right? We won't know any of that unless we listen. So this, number 4, the 4th bullet here, this is a quote from my beloved, the mighty man himself. You don't need to protect the Lord. This is one of his favorite sayings. What he means by this is sometimes people get scared when they think about talking about their faith or talking about orthodoxy, that they're going to somehow ruin it, right? They're going to say the wrong thing, they're going to break something, and they're going to ruin orthodoxy forever. Orthodoxy has managed to survive millions and millions of ignorant sinners long before any of us were born or thought of. God does not need our protection. God is protecting us. God is leading us. God is guiding us. So if you show up with that willing heart, right, your intention is honorable, you're trying to do good, you're listening, you're trying to be kind, just do the best you can. It will be okay. Orthodoxy can take it. Also, if you don't know, if a person confronts you with something that you just have no idea how to deal with, say, I don't know, or I don't know what to do, but I can find you somebody who can help you, or I don't know the answer, but I can help you find out what it is. And this actually, although ancient faith, we can't offer, pastoral care. That's what Father is for. That's what in-person, real-life priests who are local to you are for. But we do the best we can to have all kinds of resources about, any possible topic. So get your Ancient Faith app, go look at the search bar, look at our books, ask us on social media, send us an email. We try to be a good resource for people who have questions.
On Facebook it pops up now and then. There's a guy standing there with a t-shirt on, says, I don't know the answer, but I know someone who does.
Exactly, right. Well, and there's something about that, we definitely think of Ancient Faith as a community, both of the people who make the content and also all of the people who are listening to it. And a community is a group of resources, right? When you're in a group with other people, you might not have whatever it is, but you know somebody who does. And I think that's the body of Christ, right? You can't have just eyeballs or just a kidney. You need the whole body. And all of us have something to contribute that only we can offer. This was a reminder to me. This website this is not the Ancient Faith website, but this is a website that's owned by and run by Ancient Faith. Orthodoxintro.org. It's a stripped down, the most basic we could make it site designed for inquirers or seekers, or if you just want to do the basics of what is Orthodoxy, what does it mean to be a Christian at all, what are some good sort of starter resources. The great thing about this site is we actually got a grant that funds this. It's staffed by actual real live Orthodox priests, and there's a big button on it that you can push that says ask a priest, and so you can write to a real priest with your real question. Excuse me. This is useful if you happen to be in one of those places where you don't know the answer and you don't have Father handy. You can refer them to orthodoxintro.org. Those priests will answer the questions, and then they actually, their goal is to get people who come to them plugged in with somebody in their area. So, get a conversation going, they'll talk and they'll say, where are you? And then they'll reach out to Orthodox priests in that area and pass them on. The last I asked, they had actually fielded and passed on, I think something like 500 people have gone through that site so far. It's been around for 2 years, I think. So, all right. And the last one, be resilient. Like an absolute rubber band. Life is hard. Being a human being is hard, our world is hard, surviving on the internet is hard. Communication, even without the internet, communication was already hard before we went and invented the internet and made it worse. Things fail. Sometimes we publish books that no one wants to read, or we put out a podcast and it goes absolutely south, or we'll get in a conversation and it's just not going anywhere good, or we'll get upset with each other, or somebody will get upset with us. One of the things that can happen in communication is you know what you meant, but the other person heard it a completely different way and got really upset, and you think, wow, I just wrecked everything. The only answer to that is you have to get up and try again. I like to remind myself and my friends to be rebellious. So is Christ risen or is he not risen? He's risen, he's actually risen. Well, then he's risen. So get your Orthodox self up off of the chair and go try again. Don't be scared. Be kind, be clear, be brave. Get up and try again. It's worth it. And we can be brave because the battle is already won. Christ is risen. That's what I've got. I would love any questions anybody would like to ask.
Speak to us a little bit about some of the new podcasters are out there, or the topics, or what's popular. I find myself all over the place when I'm on the site, but
Yes.
what are some things maybe you want us to know?
Sure. Real quick about the site, we actually are in the end stages of having it completely rebuilt because it was time. And also, we have an app. It's on both for Android and for Apple. If you don't have it, go get it. With a vastly improved search function. The search function is important.
Yeah.
Let's see, what is popular? So you probably, because you're in the state of Pennsylvania, you may have heard of the Lord of Spirits podcast. I saw you got the Lord of Spirits book. This is a crazy phenomenon. It gets thousands and thousands and thousands of listeners. It is Father Andrew Damick and Father Stephen DeYoung. And its sort of premise is that although the modern world doesn't acknowledge the spiritual realm, we're actually completely haunted by it, and we're affected by it in all kinds of ways. And those two, they're kind of a little bit nerdy, and they're good friends, they're both brilliant, and they've taken on all kinds of hard things and parts of the Bible that nobody understands. Some of those shows go for 3 hours, and people actually sit there and listen to the whole thing. They have we had a conference for them, actually, just this last year.
We had 6 of us there.
Yeah, I think you were. So this is but they're a great example of what I'm talking about. They are the most overtly Orthodox, completely nothing watered down. They get lost in these obscure theological concepts, and people listen because it's real, right? It's true, it's authentic. They're being what they are. So that is one that maybe especially for a specific kind of mind. Our live shows, I think it's almost every night of the week. We have like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, every other Thursday, Sunday. Those are good ones. They don't go for 3 hours, so for those of us with a shorter attention span. On Monday nights, we have Dr. Jeannie Constantinou, Search the Scriptures. She is wonderful. I don't know how many graduate degrees she has, and she's just retired. She used to teach, I think, New Testament at a university out in California. And she just goes through the Bible and explains all kinds of gives historical perspective and theological perspective, and what do the fathers say about this, and asks sort of unusual questions. You wouldn't have thought to ask them about that story in the Bible, but once she asks them, you're like, well, I don't know. And then she'll answer them. So she's really good with that. On Tuesday nights, we have Live at the Lowe's. So this is a husband and wife team in Florida. Father Nick Lowe and his wife, Dr. Roxanne. He's a priest, and she's actually a practicing clinical psychologist. And they're married, and they're adorable. They look like something out of a Hallmark movie. They're amazing. really wonderful sort of conversation back and forth. So they'll take on all kinds of different topics. They have guests on their show, and they each of them try to bring, you know, their discipline to the conversation. So Father brings the pastoral side, and she brings the psychologist side. They sort of try to put it together, you know, in an orthodox way on whatever their topic is. You know, they do mental health and relationships and, you know, things in the news, all kinds of stuff. And then after them on Tuesday night, we have Father Tom Soroka, who's in Keys Rocks. And he's Ancient Faith Today Live, which takes on sort of big topic like cultural issues in the church. And he'll get various different, you know, experts or people who are involved in whatever it is to come in and talk on different topics. Really excited about that one because this year we're launching a new feature with it. We've already done it once, probably like, you know, every month or maybe every other month, we're gonna do special editions where we take on one of the big hard questions in that show. It's a longer show, and it has my old boss, John Maddox, is teaming up with Father Tom. They have sort of an intro period at the beginning of the show where they talk about, you know, here's the topic we're gonna talk about. And then they have pre-recorded interviews with a whole, you know, range of people who are involved in whatever it is that they listen to together. And then they sort of come back at the end and open up for questions and responses. And we'll be doing that again, I think March, the next one's coming up in March. We just did one on the question of the deaconess. It was a wild adventure. It was useful though. Part of the premise of that effort is that we believe very strongly in having respectful grown-up conversations, even about hard things, where we can be courteous to our opponents, people who don't agree with us. We can, you know, offer them the hospitality of being allowed to say what they think, and then present the other side. We, as a ministry of the church, and as we hope good Orthodox Christians, we will do our best always to stand up for the teachings of the church, but to be aware that sometimes the best way to understand that is to be able to hear both sides of the question explained. So we'll see where that goes. That's definitely a big project this year.
It's time to feed the cat.
It's time to feed the cat. It's important. I'm sure a cat hopes that you're paying attention.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Spanish and Chinese ministries?
They were an adventure that we worked on for a while. We actually are not currently working on. We had a grant to do some, to make some content in the Chinese language and in the Spanish language, and we had 2 teams of people working on those things. We learned a lot from it, and one of the things we learned is that in order to do a really good job of that, you need a whole team of people who are fluent in the language. So we had a few people, you know, who could speak the language, but then, for example, if you're gonna put out a book in Spanish, well, the person who wrote it in Spanish knows how to speak Spanish, but now you need a Spanish developmental editor, and a Spanish copy editor, and a Spanish proofreader, and Spanish marketing teams who are aware, not only who can write in Spanish, but who are aware of, you know, cultural considerations, right? There's multiple kinds of Spanish that are prevalent in different parts of the world, right? And maybe there are certain kinds of images that would convey an idea, or even the title would convey an idea really well to somebody in Indiana, but somebody in Nicaragua wouldn't get it at all. So we are very much still interested in Orthodox content in other languages, but it's tabled for now because we've realized that we don't have enough staffing in all the different areas of expertise you would need to do a good job of it. And theological translating is some of the hardest translating there is, because so much of theological content is sort of, what's the word, ephemeral. It's not like translating apple. You know, what's the word for apple, right? How do you translate a word that already was in English to start with, right? You have to go back to the original Greek or Hebrew, and it's thousands of years old, and you've got to go through all of those words and come up with just the right theological word. You don't want to not do it well. So we aren't currently working on it. We're still in conversations about it with people, looking into what would that take. I think my personal opinion is it would actually take its own press, you know, almost like a whole, you take the same staff you have at Ancient Faith and replicate that in whatever the target language was.
How was the music chosen? Who does that, you know?
Oh, you mean like on the,
The 24-hour music, you know?
lots of ways. A lot of it, frankly, is just availability. Is having music that we have permission to use. that we can get licensing for that's orthodox, that, you know, we have a good enough recording of, right, that it's high enough sound quality that it'll play well over the radio. Yes.
I'm embarrassed that I don't know, but what does